Hi guys, it's Janica here from Multispective, and I'm here to share with you our latest episode. Today, I interview Maria Swanson, a shaman and a psychic and healer. She herself has been through a series of childhood trauma, from having a mother with borderline personality disorder to sexual abuse as a young age, and which later on then turned into alcohol and addiction, and actually leading to some unhealthy, toxic relationships in her life. The point that turned around for her was when she nearly committed suicide. And at that point, she decided she needed to start the process of healing. And in that time, she discovered shamanism and really connected with that. So today, she's a psychic. She's able to channel her spirit guides that guide her along the way. She's able to read energies and actually help people heal from their own personal traumas. So we talk a lot about that. We talk about dimensions. We talk about crossing these different energies. And she ends with a beautiful poem that she uses in her own experience when she's actually healing others. So stay tuned till the end and listen to that poem. It's so healing and so amazing. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Maria. Welcome to Multispective. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful. It's good to see you.
Yeah, being on the totally different end of the world, and here we are connected. Some power in this. There's so much power in this.
Very much so. Yeah, that's a lot of what I believe and who I am is that we are all more connected and similar than we are, perceived to be different.
For sure. And it's one of those things that I found, like, when I started doing this podcast in general, like, I was really nervous. I was like, I don't know, these people that I'm speaking to are from totally different backgrounds and different places in the world, different cultures. Like, how do you connect with individuals, right? And
we all have the same beating heart. So we are really, just saying we are all connected is a very grand thing. Yeah. And really, when you pull it apart, I mean, doing the work that I do, that's a huge reason why I'm here, sure. Because we are all connected, and that's where synchronicities come in. That's, where all the magic lies. When you start to really see that, like, I see the God self in everyone. And that's, I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool place to be in this journey.
Yeah. And you have actually a really, really fascinating journey yourself. I mean, I've gone through your website, which I'll put into the description, listeners. So stay tuned and check it out as well. A lot about your journey, a lot about your story there. You have your blog pages, and you feature your books and stuff there as well. Again, on the description for listeners who want to access the books as well. But really, really fascinating story. Again, another story of triumph through tribulation, which is kind of our motto. And I remember reading that somewhere on your platform as well. I think triumph through adversity or something.
Well, my motto is triumphing over trauma. That was that's why I birthed Emotional Musings. I started it in October of 2018, and I did it to share my story, my testimony of truth. Right. And shine light into the shadows. And that is what I do as a shamanic healer. That is what I do for other people. I never want people to feel as alone as I felt throughout a lot of my journey until I started, on this healing path. But I've been through a lot of trauma, addiction, and eating disorder, and I share all of that. And then that's where a lot of my poetry is born from.
Right. I've never actually featured a story quite like yours before. You talk about certain aspects of, like, your childhood.
Like, I come from generations of trauma, as do many of us. And I believe that people like me, I consider myself a light worker. We are here to break generational trauma. And I can say now, and this is kind of, a new revelation, I've healed that relationship with my mother. It's taken my whole life. We've had periods of not talking. And that was really beneficial for me. I can only speak of my own experience. I have there's 4 of us. My mom has 4 children. And that was a lot to take in, to really learn to hear my own voice, because that is what this journey of being human is all about. Remembering who we are at our core. So coming into this world super sensitive, I believe all of us have a level of psychic abilities. I like to say God set me with my sense settings on high. And so everything was very overwhelming to me, very jarring, very loud, very scary. And then going through trauma turned a lot of that off. And it wasn't until I was ready to really unearth it, in divine timing, and finding my mentor. And I was already, years into my healing journey. But it started when I tried to take my own life in 2011. I was in and out of mental hospitals. I was on medications for a long time. I've done a lot of different modalities until I found shamanic healing, resurrected a piece of my soul, and my life has literally not looked the same since 2019. And here we are going into 2024.
Sort of click. Right. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like a little click that happened for you, where you were like, this is the thing that I've been looking for.
Very much so. This is who I am. This is everything. I like to say the first 40 years of my life were very confusing. And then all of a sudden everything made sense. And it was like, oh, this is why I'm so weird. This is why I, feel people's feelings, know people's thoughts, see auras, see colors, all these things. And my mentor, her name is Lindsay Luna, and she was like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you, hone your gifts. And now I do this full time and write my poetry and write my books, and I'm working on my 10th collection right now. So
I love this.
It's a lot. There's a lot to unpack. So you ask me, you be the director, and I will answer anything, because nothing is off the table for me. I believe that this is medicine for the masses, and people need to hear this.
For sure. Mm-hmm. And I think a little bit of background context will definitely help sort of put things into perspective for our listeners as well. So let's dial it, start back to your childhood. You mentioned a lot about feeling quite lonely and feeling quite, you said even in your blog that you pushed yourself to blend in with the wall. You just wanted to make yourself as small and as little as possible. And I found that really, really interesting, because I feel like that's sort of one of the only things that a little child has to do when they don't have the power. They're helpless. And it's either you put yourself right in front of unsafe environments, or you try to make yourself as invisible as possible. Both of them are traumatic.
Yeah.
Because you're watching this trauma happen right in front of you. At the same time, the only thing is that you're trying to find a way to cope, right? And that's something that gets bottled into your body, which only comes out later when you have the power to sort of maneuver your life, right? But I do want to know a little bit about your childhood. You said you had 4 siblings, yet you felt really alone. So talk to me a little bit about
that. I'm a middle child. I come from, my parents were married previously. So my brother and sister are 10 and 12 years older than me. And then my younger sister and I are full blood sisters. I don't, looking back now, because I'm a mother too, I know my parents did the best they could. With their own resources and their own emotional intelligence. I just realized at a young age that I had more emotional intelligence than my parents, which is scary. I just always wanted to be the good girl, the nice girl, and I did. And you hide yourself, and then you get to be a teenager and you rebel, and I discovered alcohol and discovered smoking pot, and just started to really cover up, in an attempt to cover up what was going on for me, which I couldn't speak to anybody about because I would sound crazy. And I was very aware of that. So, a lot of these things I don't think you realize until you are able to really speak your truth.
For sure. And usually takes it usually takes maybe some sort of intervention or some sort of third person to connect the dots a little bit for you, to be hey, maybe there's a trigger or there's a reason for why you have these struggles right now.
Very much so. And for me, I call it my gift of desperation, when I attempted to take my own life. And that was in the midst of a really, chaotic divorce. I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. I had separated from my husband, my doing. I really felt like I was unraveling, and I was in an attempt to, protect my children from myself. I found myself in a very abusive relationship with somebody who was a monster of a human being. And I thought taking control was for me to take myself out because I felt like he was going to kill me. And I was in the hospital, and I remember distinctly because I was in like it was a New England day, a typical New England day, very overcast. And this like light came through the window, and I heard the voice of God, and it was like, what are you going to do now? And it was just very, very loud. And at that time too, it was like 6 years after my Nana had passed, and I was very close to my Nana. And so she is one of my guardian angels. She is a guide of mine. Fast forward to 2020, my dad passing over right when I became anointed a shaman. He is a top guide of mine as well. And so I believe that was when I started to listen and started to really want to heal. Like, who am I? What am I doing? There has to be more. Right. And this has to, because I didn't know who I was. I mean, that was why I pulled away from my ex-husband. I said, I don't know who I am anymore. Or at all. So it was a crisis of self.
Right. But so, sorry, going back, when you say your mom had borderline disorder, can you talk to me a little bit about
this was undiagnosed. This is not something that my it's not diagnosed.
Right.
It's something that all of us siblings know. She just really struggled. She struggled with highs and lows, and you never knew what you were going to get. And it was scary. And being able to pick up on all that, I knew that something was off. And I just wanted to fix her and heal her and keep her happy. And that was really, really hard to do. My dad was emotionally unavailable. He worked all the time. And, my sister and I were left to our own devices a lot. I have an older sister who definitely stepped in and was like a pseudo mom for us. Most recently, I lived with her because I found myself homeless. And she's a big part of my story. I adore her. I'm very close with all my siblings. I feel like that is a byproduct of going through a traumatic upbringing. We're all very close. But, I have to say, besides growing up in dysfunction, because I feel like a lot of people grow up in dysfunction, the sexual abuse and trauma was what really stole my power. And that happened when I was very young. So when I met my mentor, it was when I was ready to unearth that. I call that the pit of my trauma.
Right.
And unearthing that, being molested at 5 and 6 years old, that very much changed me. So going through the healing of that.
Was this at the hands
of babysitters? No, not a relative. Babysitters. Right. And it was my sister and I together. And honestly, I don't have a lot of recollection of, and I feel like that's a beautiful thing. I don't remember a lot of that. And then, I feel like that was, having my power stolen at a young age. That's a huge part of it, because you learn to assimilate and be quiet, and, that it's scary. It's a scary thing. And then I was raped at 18 and going through that, near death. I mean, it really wasn't a near-death experience of being totally violated and abused on a regular basis in a relationship. My neighbors tried to help me a lot. They would call the police, and the police would show up, and I would say everything's fine. And I was just so afraid. And I feel like, that me trying to take my own light out was a gift of desperation. I'm grateful for it. It's, I'm giving you the middle finger because I have a semicolon on my right hand. And then recently I put a diamond under that because my birth chart is a diamond. And that reminds me to, to shine like a diamond. And I work best under pressure. That's kind of how my life's been. Like, I've been through so many things.
I can't help but notice though, you at one point when I was asking you a little bit about your childhood, you said a lot of people go through trauma. The trauma is not the important part, or it's not the main. And I was like, it's big what you went through. Let's take a moment to just be like.
I think I think though, for me, it's what you do with it, right? Like, everything is a choice. everything in life is a choice. And so I have a lot of accountability for what I chose to do. I chose to do drugs. I tried to control my environment with an eating disorder. You know, a lot of those things. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, sure. It is. It's very much the fabric of who I am. It's also made me incredibly strong. So I'm to the point in my life where I don't regret anything. I look at every experience as valuable, you know, because it's taught me and made me who I am. So
yeah, I mean, and the thing is that, like, I've done this podcast with a lot of different people who've experienced different kinds of trauma, and it never gets easier to hear it. But I always feel a sense of pride at the end of it from every single guest that's ever come on my podcast, because of the way that they've overcome their trauma and their resilience, that they've, like, the amount of time and effort they've put into that healing process that never gets old, and it's always different with every single person. You know what I mean? Like, there may be 5 guests that have gone through sexual abuse, you know, at a young age, but it's different and unique in its own way. The healing process is different and unique in its own way. And I think that the message that I try to get across to our listeners as well is that there's no one way about it.
Absolutely not. No, Jenica, I definitely, I mean, that is a huge part of my story and of my truth. I went through the system of going into a hospital, being on psychiatric medications for many years, 15 years. And I think, you know, for me, like, that was important for the crisis critical time. But then it started to be very detrimental to me because it covered a lot of my gifts and it kept me kind of stuck, and it just wasn't me anymore. And so then I found, you know, more of a holistic view, and I've been doing yoga all my life. I studied to be a dancer, so I've always been a very active person. So bringing that into my life, changing the way that I eat. I'm a pescatarian and I eat mostly plant-based. I'm not strictly vegan.
I love that.
But that's a huge part of it. Breath work is a huge part. Crystal healing. I'm sitting here with like 2 crystals. Like, you know, all of these things add into the fabric of healing, of my tapestry of me. And meditation is huge. And a lot of people say, I don't know how to meditate. Well, it's just something that you start simply. You know, it's really just learning to be an observer of your own self. And now with,
and like, finally,
now with what I do, I'm able, you know, it's very healing for me because I have to be very strong in where I am and where other people are in order for me to tap into their energy field. So I have to clear my energy on a regular basis. And so I do that through the meditation and crystal healing. But, you know, all of these things are a huge part of how I heal. And I haven't been on medication since 2016. So I don't think, you know, I'm not here to advocate for or against. I want to speak truth into what I've done. And I am living proof that you don't have to be on I mean, I was thrown, and I write about this, I was thrown every diagnosis in the DSM, you know, from bipolar to borderline to DID, all of these things. And it's like, no, I'm just a psychic channel who was in complex trauma. So I have complex PTSD, and I was pulling myself in and out of my body in dissociation, which is what a lot of people go through. And it's not, you know, I mean, I'm so much more, but it was hard. It was hard to be in a hospital, to get those diagnoses, to feel so kind of like a death sentence and stuck. And, oh my God, this is like, you know, I'm never going to be any better. And more than doing just, you know, talk therapy. I've done EMDR. Like, I've done a lot of different healing. And so I'm here to advocate for that. But for me personally, the healing that I do with others, that goes to the root. That is the soul sickness. That is what I am, you know, aiming at. And that is where I believe everything stems from, because we have many different bodies within this physical body. So I just see souls.
No, I love that. I'm
a soul seer.
About to ask you that.
Okay.
No, I was actually about to ask you that earlier as well, because, like, sort of watching your mom grow up with her mental health conditions, that, again, you mentioned were not diagnosed, but it was obvious to you and your siblings growing up, whether that was something when you growing up were, having your internal dialogues. Did you ever get to that point wondering like, hey, all of these things that I'm experiencing, am I inching towards my mom, or am I? And the thing is, it's really important to have someone on your corner to be like, no, you are fine. All you need to do is just find that purpose.
Yeah, no, I didn't have anybody who was, I mean, I had like some wonderful teachers and I had great friends. I know, I'm somebody who is able, like I have lifetime friends. So I knew that something was off in my home. But I mean, I have to be honest, I didn't have a lot of people saying like, you're so smart, Maria, and discover your purpose. And like, I didn't have any of that. I've always been a writer. And so that helped me a lot, journaling and just getting all of that out. And I was able to see that, like, I mean, that was a huge fear of mine. And being in the hospital, realizing like, oh my God, I am now my mother. But I just feel like I was just so consumed with her energy that it was overtaking me. So I had to learn to find my own voice. And I did.
I love that. Yeah. How do you sense a person's energy?
Oh, goodness. It's just
how long does it take as well?
Well, I mean, it doesn't. So, I mean, this is how I exist. This is how I exist within this meat suit of a human body. I feel spirit. I hear spirit. I see spirit. There's many different ways. There's not like a cut and dry. When I go into session, I have a way of doing it. Like I have a poem that I channeled a few years ago that I use as like an introduction. And then we go through a little bit of a guided meditation. And that is how I sync up with the client I'm working with into his or her energy field. Because I work with a lot of women, but I do work with men. I have worked with men. And I also worked with young adults, 18, 19, 20. Wow. My own son is 22, really, so that's pretty cool. We've done sessions together. He's gifted. Yeah. Both of my children are gifted. Yeah. And I say gifted, but that's like really all really have these abilities. And you'll see, Jenica, within this next year, a lot more of our psychic abilities are going to come into play. And we're really going to be gaining our multidimensionality. It's going to make some people feel cuckoo. And that's why people like me are here, to be like, no, everything's fine. This is really who you are. Own your gifts, own your power, own your truth, be your light, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of an episode I did with another psychic, actually. She was the one that sort of like taught me about this whole concept of like, I'd heard about it like multidimensional like theories, like to an extent, like more like in things like, Rick and Morty and those kind of shows.
I know, because entertainment does mimic life. That is what art is. Art is an interpretation of life. And so a lot of that is true. Like I'm a big movie person. I love Star Wars. Like there is so much truth to that. Like if people really knew how much truth there is to that, there is a light and there is a dark. I mean, we exist within all of them. They are within us. That is part of the journey, is to take those shadow pieces that we stuff aside and don't deem as unworthy and not okay. And, all those things, and to just own them and go, no, that's a part of me. And it's really just a temporary state of being. That's what feelings are. They're temporary. And so when you can just own them, sit with them, embrace them, you're able to move along. That's what I do as an energy healer.
Yeah. Well, would you say that the very first time you started like really listening to that, you did go through a period of depression as well? Was it a very dark time for you? Is that the time when, I mean, you mentioned that you were hospitalized and stuff for a while, but they say that the very first time you open yourself up to it, it's a very, very dark, you hear very dark messages.
No, not at all. Nope, absolutely not. No, because, I believe, for me, from my experience, there is a lot of demonic attachment in my mother's side of the family. And so that was already something that I was dealing with. So no, so that wasn't, I mean, I guess when I was a young child, but I think that's always been a part of the experience for me. So no, I'm going to say the opposite. When I started to really listen, I was hearing God. I was hearing my angels. I was hearing, you know, the light beings that I am related to and come from. And that's who's been guiding me. No, I'm of light.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Describe the dimensions to our listeners, because I'm very, very curious as to what's past third dimension and what does it look like?
Well, it's kind of like a dream. I mean, I think everybody's interpretation of it is slightly different. But like, you know, the fifth dimension, for instance, what we're moving into now, what's coming, like was breaking up this 3D matrix reality here on Earth is the 5D. And that is, you know, unconditional love. It's gorgeous. It's very colorful. It's just full of light. I'd have to say it's more of a feeling. It's not like, because I don't know, depending on whom I'm working on and how connected they are really projects, because that's what we are for each other, right? We're mirrors and we're projecting towards one another. So I can work with like my mentor, and her and I are in this like trippy, like, it's like we're in an acid dream. And then I'll work with some other people, and it's not as colorful and as loud and as bright and as turned on. But so what I see when I am with, I mean, when I'm in session, because that's a boundary. I don't just like tap into everyone when I'm out in the world. That's not what I do. It's not who I am. That would be very dangerous to do. And I also wouldn't be able to function if I was doing that all the time. So I just am able to, when I'm in a shamanic trance, see souls. I see your soul information. I can do past life regressions. And I just see chords and strands within chakras. I could see chakras that are almost dead, chakras that are alive, like transplants. It's basically, shamans are spiritual surgeons, and we are conduits for spirit. So as a channel, I just allow spirit to come through me. I do that a lot through toning and chanting. I use crystals. I use my music. I like to burn herbs and flower blossoms, a lot of different things. I know my mentor always says, like, sessions with me are like drugs without the drugs. Because you don't need that. I mean, you know, and I'm an advocate for plant medicine, but that's not how I work. I just...
Yeah, because people usually do associate.
They do. And people ask me a lot, like, oh, can we do ayahuasca together? And, oh, do you like administer, you know... And I myself am an advocate of microdosing of mushrooms in a very small doses. And I usually take them at night. And so I do it in the astral realms while I'm sleeping. And it's been very healing for me. It's helped me process through a lot of heavy, deep emotions. But, you know, I haven't drank alcohol. It'll be 3 years in February. This is the longest period of my life where I haven't abused alcohol, because I was a blackout drunk. And I drank alcohol like it was water. So that was, you know, that's a huge difference. But no, I mean, it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to be able to do this, but I really feel like my gift to the world is my ability to listen and to channel what divine is telling me, the messages, into poetry. And I have, you know, through emotional musings, most of my collections are my soul's something, my soul's language, my soul's journey, my soul's light, my soul's dance. The ones I'm working on currently are my soul's music, my soul's inspiration, my soul's love. The one that I've dedicated to my partner is called My Soul's Love, a book of spells, because it's what drew me to being able to see him, but I had to see myself to be able to see him. So it's a journey of self-love. Once you have self-love, then you can accept love from other people. That's the true thing. You have to know love in order to have love.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that you said that, like, that's what sort of the fifth dimension is sort of all about. It's like a concept, not necessarily something
it is something that you can, it's not like people, I think people have this like misconception of like, we talk about this new paradigm that we're building in New Earth. Well, we're all not going to be transported to another place. No, that's not happening. We're bringing in the love vibration, because love is the highest vibration. It is what will heal all of us. And that's what's happening. And it's breaking the darkness of hate, of fear, of separation. And, you know, people like me, we all have our own, we're speaking about this.
Mm-hmm. Right. But what are the physical things do you think that like our Earth needs to go through to be able to experience?
Well, it's gonna be destruction and chaos. I mean, that's how creation has been born since the beginning of time. You know, when you go into like mythology, and I'm not somebody who's like a big historian, but you know, I do know a lot of archetypes and myths. I love Joseph Campbell, and that is how things change. They change through destruction and chaos, and so it's gonna be tough. But it's going to be beautiful because things have to break in order to be rebuilt with a stronger foundation. That's just how it works.
Right. And it's kind of a little bit like reflective of your own personal journey too. Like you did have, you know, destruction and chaos for a while, trauma, you know, and all of that sort of like happened for you. But then, you know, you had to have all of that. And then another set of like another whole experience of healing for you to get to the other side and sort of feel that sort of love and forgiveness, right?
Well, that is the path of a shaman. That is the path of somebody who is a healer. Our whole lives have to be broken into a million pieces. And that was what that was a term I used to use in the hospital. I'd say to this one doctor who was very kind to me, I'd say, what am I doing here? My God, again, like I feel like my brain is just like my whole being is in a million pieces. And one of the things my Nana would tell me from the other side is like, I'm helping you push the puzzle pieces together. We're pushing the puzzle pieces together. That's what we're doing. And, you know, here I am, my puzzle is together.
Yeah.
You know, it's taken a long time. I mean, I started this healing journey seriously in 2011. I had been in therapy most of my life, in and out of therapy, but really my own personal healing journey started in 2011. And here we are. Right. 2024.
Do you think that therapy was a very essential element?
It was a piece of it, for sure.
Getting you here?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I feel like anything that you're gravitated to that's working for you, do until it's not working anymore. You know, I'm not here to tell anybody the way to heal or, you know, what they should or shouldn't do. Because there's so many things out there, so many different types of therapies and, you know, self-help and affirmations. I mean, there's just so many things, the way you eat, but I feel like it's all, for me, this is a lifestyle. It's more than a lifestyle. I mean, this is just really, I do things that are guided to me. Like the beginning of 2020, I knew I was going to stop eating meat. I just felt like it just didn't align with me anymore. Yeah, basically everything I've become, you know, I quit smoking. I was a smoker since I was 15 years old. At one point I smoked like 2 packs a day. Even thinking about that now, it sounds like crazy because I like to run and I like to swim. So it's like, you know, before I tried to kill myself, I was literally training for a marathon, smoking cigarettes and drinking. So crazy. And then 10 years later, I did another marathon completely clean and clear. And I came in first. So I did that for myself. I didn't do that. You know, I come from a competitive dance background. So I feel like I've always been competitive with myself, but I wanted to prove to myself, like that was then, this is now. And I'm so much more together and I feel so much better about myself. So I feel like there's a lot of different ways to heal. I'm not a huge advocate right now of psychotherapy because I feel like that just perpetuates and kind of grooves in the energy and re-traumatizes a person. I feel like it has to be removed energetically, which is why I do what I do. EMDR was huge for me. I'm a huge advocate of EMDR because that is a reprocessing of emotions. That helped me a ton. That was really, 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 really big.
I like that. Yeah. No, I do. I agree. And I think that like to an extent, I think not necessarily like reliving those traumas, but like sort of resurfacing it to an extent, just to be able to sort of connect the things and be able to sort of release it. Yeah, but that releasing process is very important.
And then moving on, like you've got to like keep it moving, you know, letting it go, the releasing of it, you know, and not just harping on it. But you can't change the past. It has to come to an acceptance. And so another huge modality for me that I learned when I was in the hospital was DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And that's very, very helpful for people with borderline. So, you know, all of my siblings, we all have traits of borderline because we were raised by somebody. So it was a whole relearning for me. And I took that course 5 times as an outpatient. And I have a workbook. And for a long time, when I was a sponsor, when I was really in AA, I'm not in AA anymore, but I was a sponsor, and I would tell the girls that I was sponsoring, like, hey, look at this. Like, this might be really helpful for you, because there's many tools in the tool belt, you know, and I feel like that was a huge turning point for me. And radical acceptance, that's a tough one, because you have to get to a place of acceptance.
Exactly. And part of that, I just wanted to ask, do you think part of acceptance is also forgiveness?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, did you have to physically go back and forgive the people?
So, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like that could be sticky for people. I do feel like that is a huge point to get to. And it is important. And you don't forgive for them. You forgive for yourself. Like, I'm going to forgive what happened because it happened. And what did you learn from it? And a lot of it too is forgiving yourself, because like Maya Angelou says, once you know better, you do better. And so then it's about, you know, then boundaries come into play. Like, we teach people how to treat us. I don't put myself, this comes down to me protecting and knowing my own energy. I don't put myself around people, places, and things that are toxic for me. And if I am, I stay really quiet. I kind of pull back and I just observe, and I don't have to engage with everything that is in my world. Yeah. I feel like a lot more people should adhere to that. It would be a lot more peaceful world if we all were like reacting to one another. It's like, you know, calm.
100%.
Take it down a notch. Not everything's personal.
Yeah. 100%. No, I know that sometimes that can be an issue for me, because, you know, I think I was raised to be very mindful of people around me, and to sort of like be aware of like what others might think of me. I think that was just very much a part of, like, you know, the community that I was raised. It was like, you know, just don't say anything that might make you, and it was more with the intention to help me to sort of like stop and think a little bit before I, you know, act on things. But, you know, when you do get so absorbed in that sort of mindset where you're starting to think about what others are going to think before what you need to think for yourself, you do kind of lose like that sense of like my inner voice. And so there was a time where I did not know how to listen. Like, something really small, like a tub of ice cream, I'd be like, oh, but, you know, this could lead to this, and what would this person think? I mean, it's really, really silly things that, you know, to anyone would be like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But was very, very real for me at some point. And I had to sort of keep telling myself, it's okay. If you want to have that piece of cake, it is okay. And I know it sounds really silly, but I think like that was a very important dialogue for me to have with myself to forgive.
But that's like, important. Like self-talk. So I say to a lot of people, like, talking to yourself is a sign of good mental health. I do it all the time. I talk to myself in the mirror. It's how I stay grounded. I like to do a lot of singing. Sometimes I sing my responses to people because I'm also funny and goofy. And then but that's a positive way to be, is to be mindful, is to talk to yourself. And really, we have no control over how people are going to respond to us. What we do have control over is how we respond to the world. And that is all about perspective. And that is all about, you know, again, another way of owning your own power and your truth. Like, we don't when somebody says like, oh, I'm triggered and you're making me feel something. No. You feel that within, and don't avoid them. That's Triggers are here for healing, just like our feelings are. We have to, that's a huge thing. You got to feel it to heal it. You have to be triggered. Like, My partner and I, tend to trigger each other a lot. And it's like, no, let's talk about this. What is that bringing up for you within you? Let's not avoid it. Let's talk about it and let's own it. And like, here's my intention. This is what I intended. And it wasn't to be hurtful. And then that's how you work through things. I mean, these things are all beautiful gifts. They're not like negatives. I feel like people are like, oh my God, I'm triggered. It's like, good. Now what are you going to do with it? Like, what are you going to do with that? You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
How are you going to respond? And I feel like when you are mindful, when you're able to slow down the monkey mind, the stories, because that's what our mind likes to do, right? To spin stories and tell us lots of lies. And that's the ego. It's keeping us small. Yes, the ego is important. We, as a human being, we're never going to transcend our ego. I believe that it's like we're in a car. Ego and soul are in the, we're married. We're married. You're trying to marry your ego to your soul and not have your ego always leading.
Right.
And it's just a marry of it all. So being mindful is a way to observe that and be careful with your words. Yeah, I try to be. I do my best to be. That's my best foot forward is really, sometimes I'll close my eyes and I'll be really like slow to respond, and that will drive people around me nuts. And I'm like, no, you know what? I want to really choose what I'm going to say to you. Because for a long time, especially in our household, it was super reactionary and loud and quick and fast. And I say now to my children, like, do not let anyone pull you out of your nature. And I feel like being in that fight or flight traumatic environment pulled me out of my nature an awful lot. And that felt awful. That was like a self-betrayal. So I'm very mindful of that these days. And I just don't do that because I love myself too much to say things I don't mean to other people. Yeah.
That's true. And again, it's not about like, obviously because you care about other people, but also more because you care about yourself.
Care about myself. Everything starts from self, Jenica. We cannot externalize love. We cannot, fill voids from the outside. Everything is an inside job. And that has been a huge part of my healing journey is learning that, healing these things within. Therefore, now I can give and receive from others in a positive way.
You mentioned that you do have a bit of a relationship with your mom now. Like you have spoken to her recently and sort of rebuilt.
Very recently, and this was something, so like 2.5 years ago, we had this huge falling out and I just really was at peace with never speaking to her again. And it wasn't until my partner, really inspired me. He's like, Maria, you've done so much healing. Why don't you reach out to her? Why don't you try to bridge this relationship now? And so we've talked, we've texted, we had planned a dinner. It just didn't, it fell through, but it is different, it's very different.
What about your siblings? Do they have a relationship?
So my brother does not, but my two sisters do. Especially my younger sister, because she's lived in Florida. My other sister lives in Utah. And so, it's harder for her, but I don't like to speak about my siblings' relationships because that's theirs. Like we all have our own relationships with our mother. Yeah. And so I can only speak about my experience and my relationship.
Do you feel like one part of the anger you experienced towards your mother, of course, was the borderline, but also the fact that when you were sort of going through the abuse with, in the hands of your nannies, that your mom wasn't there or present, or your mom and dad were not?
No, I think honestly for me, Jenica, it was not being understood. So I am, neurodivergent, high on the autistic spectrum. And that was not acknowledged growing up. I think especially, I was born in the late 70s. So girls especially, these things were not being diagnosed like they are now. And honestly, I feel like we're just actually the most normal. I feel like most of us, we all live on some version of the spectrum. And I think over time, this is going to become more accepted and not such a stigma. But I feel like for me, it was not being seen and heard in that way. And again, my parents did not know that. They did not know that they had an uber sensitive child. So I think that was harder. Not having people who were emotionally available to themselves, but then also to their children, and I have to say, like, for me as a parent, I really tried my best to see both of my children as separate people, to let them have their feelings, to mirror feelings. Like, it's okay to have these feelings. And my parents just were not able to do that consistently.
Right.
They just weren't.
Do you think that sort of like ate into your first relationship? You said the abusive relationship that you were in. Do you feel like there was parts of that you had carried forward and you...
well, I think it's a level of deserving. Like, I felt like at that point that's what I deserved. I feel when I talk about that version of Maria, it feels like, I just turned 46. So I say, like, I've lived a lot of lifetimes in these 46 years. But my marriage was not that way. It was not abusive. He was definitely a soulmate at the time. And, we were married for 12 years. It was the relationship after the divorce when I was really struggling, like in the depths of addiction and alcoholism and an eating disorder and an exercise anorexic. And like, I was basically killing myself. And then I found this man who that was literally like, I needed to see that. I needed to experience that. Because it taught me a lot. And then after that relationship, I was in an 8-year relationship with somebody that I trauma bonded to, for sure. And, being able to leave that and then embrace the love that I have now, is true love. Right. And so I've had a lot of versions of love, but I feel like, again, this is all part of the path and the journey. Embracing what we know we deserve. And I feel like a lot of people don't really, and I mean, these are tough things. Like, when you say this to people, like, oh, well, do you really though? Do you really like feel so accepting of yourself that you're able to receive love from others? Like, something I've even asked my partner to do, like, is like open-eyed meditations. Like, can we just like, look, that's hard for people. Like, that's
open-eye meditation.
Yeah, like just to stare into somebody and just take them in. That is so beautiful, and that is so hard for some people. And I feel like you have to be able to look within and be okay with you to do that with another human being, because that's how we see one another.
And when you do these
eyes.
And when you're doing these open eye meditations, are you actually reciting or saying anything, or are you just looking at each other like in silence?
No, it's just silence.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's a couple's bonding technique.
Yeah. Like a soul to soul.
It is. It's a soul to soul thing. Yeah. That's something that I liked. I've been doing that all my life. It's part of how I read people. I just tap into their soul through their eyes. And people have said to me, like, I used to work, I've worked a lot of retail in my life, and I used to work at this hotel, and one of the guys in the hotel was like, God, Maria, when you look at me, it's like you're looking into my soul. And I'm like, but I am. Because I like to do that. I like to, when I talk to people, look in their eyes, like attend to them. And people have told me, like, I am somebody who just allows people to feel safe. That's why people talk to me my whole life. Like, they just come up and tell me their life stories and are like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And it's like, it's okay. I do. I'm a safe person. I can hold space. I can listen to you. Yes, I like to chat and I like to talk, but I also know how to listen.
Yeah. But earlier you mentioned about past life regression. So I guess this would mean that you believe in reincarnation as well.
Absolutely. I know a lot of my past lives, and I know that, like,
tell me about the last one.
Okay. So I'll tell you a few things. So when I first did my first session on a client, I was like, oh, wow, I've definitely done this in other lifetimes. This feels very familiar, what I'm doing. And I know that I've been a shaman and a healer in many, many lifetimes, if not all of them. My most recent past life, I know that, my partner that I'm with now, we've spent many, many, many many lifetimes together. I believe him to be my twin flame. Now there's a lot of, controversy about twin flames and a lot of mistruths out there, but really he is a divine partner. So we are teaching each other unconditional love and bringing that love, again, that energy into the earth. That's the journey. And it's extremely complex. My most recent past life, I know I was strangled and I was younger than I am now. I know my mentor was there. I know he was there. I know actually 2 of my dogs, we have 5 German Shepherds, and 2 of them were in that life. I was taking care of children. I know my name. I like that. That's who I call my soul. That's who I'm very attached to. Her name is Serena. I call her into session. Like I push Maria aside. Maria is my ego. Maria is my personality. Serena is my soul. And I was in the Middle East. I had dark hair. Yeah, I can see myself. And then it's wild. And like, what's wild about these things is when I'm not only with him, but like with my mentor and other people I've done past life regressions with, we can tap into this energy and both of us are there and both of us can see and both of us, like, I'll say, this is happening. And they'll say, yes. And then that happened. And it's like, it's until you have these experiences, of course, you're not going to believe it or think it to be true, but there's so many things that are unknown, right? Like not everything is tangible. But then again, this comes down to a belief system. It's like so many people have to see, feel, it's like, this is a knowing. This is an experience. And if you haven't experienced it, then you're just unaware, and that's okay.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to like go to the Middle East to like sort of?
I would love to. I would love to. I mean, I feel that's probably part of my journey at some point. I'd love to travel. Yeah.
And do you feel like the moment that you were able to sort of see your past life, did that help you to sort of understand the experiences and the traumas that you experienced at a young age?
Well, because
like, did it all sort of like make sense?
Yeah, well, so that's part of it. Like we carry our souls, continue to come here to experience things and heal from them. So I know that I was strangled in many past lives, but most specifically this last one. And the man that tried to take me out in this life was there. That was him. So like I faced it again. I overcame it. I didn't in the last lifetime. I've made it through. I'm a lot older than I have been in many lifetimes.
Yeah. So what?
And being a writer too. Sort of, being a writer is huge.
But like sort of. Just to like talk a little bit more about this whole like past life thing and the cycles of it as well. Like, are there things that you can do in this life to break that cycle for good, so that you can guarantee that your next life, your soul will never come across someone who's going to strangle you again, or you're not going to come across these sort of toxic souls?
I do know that when you face things and heal them, you've healed them, and you're able to move past them in this lifetime. Okay, so I've known this. So I went through my spiritual awakening in 2019, and in like 2020, so I went to at one point live with my mentor for a few months, and we did like a lot of like high level mastership type work together. And I know that this is my last lifetime on Earth. This is my soul's last one.
Interesting.
And so I'm going to, I believe, back to the planet that I came from. We've covered a lot here, Jenica.
I know. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, but all of these things, I believe, like, I mean, this part of my hair, like you remarked on my hair before we even started recording. And so my sister helped me bring this into reality a year ago. And then I had them for 10 months. I took them out and I put them back in. And I'm a rainbow unicorn. Like, this is such a statement, but it's a part of my spiritual journey. And that's what people who have dreadlocks, that's what we're doing. It's like, this is me. This is all the layers of me, the colors of me. It's hugely me. Yeah. So self-expression has always been a big part of who I am. I'm a rainbow unicorn. I'm a chameleon. I like to like switch and change, and Another thing I have tattooed is a number 9. So that's my divine number. So to find your divine number, your life path number, you take your birth date, all the digits, you add them up till it gets to a single number. Mine is a 9. 9 is about completions. So death and rebirth. I am in a continual death and rebirth cycle. Like that is 100% what drives me. What I'm very tapped into is a lot of change. I've experienced a ton of change in just this one lifetime.
That's crazy. Can you talk to me about like the spirit guides? Like, how did you find them? Why these particular people? Is it because of the connection that you have with them, or do you have spirit guides that you never really knew? Like
Well, sure. So like, okay. So for instance, like my ancestors, I have ancestors obviously that I didn't know because they were already in spirit that I've connected to now because of the work I do. My Nana and my dad are the top 2 humans of my spirit guides. I believe my Nana has been my guardian angel in many lifetimes. I believe that I am an earth angel, so I communicate with Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, and Archangel Gabriel on a regular basis. And there's light beings that I connect to. There's shamanic healer, like shamanic guides that I connect to. I actually, like, when I was connecting with my partner, I was seeing him from a version of him from a past life. And I call him like my white wizard. And I speak about it in the podcast that you had listened to, the Bring on the Woo. He was my white wizard. That's him. Like, he was literally, he's been guiding me for a long time. But when I started to really listen, and I believe like this is part of the journey, you know, I didn't come in with all this. It was a learning process. It was an allowing process. It was, it's like a leveling up. You know, what I do with a lot of my clients is like upgrading energy. So I feel like after, you know, we kind of grow out of our little energy field aura that we're working within, and we expand it and we upgrade our energy, and we're able to bring in more. Because if we didn't, number one, that would be destabilizing. You know what I mean? Like this is it's a growth process. It's a enlightening, right? That's what it is.
Yeah. You mentioned though, like that you a couple of times that like you have to actually listen, not just listen, but really listen to your guides. So is it that they're not speaking to you in the way that I am? It's not like direct.
No, it's not a running.
This is what's happening. This will happen.
So there's times where it's louder than others.
Okay.
Most of the time, so I'll tell you, like, I'm easily able to tap in after I've done breath work. That's a way of clearing my channel, of being able to listen, being out in nature, connecting with nature. You know, I love the beach. I'm a big beach person. That's my happy place. I connect easily in the beach. I connect when I'm in my rocking chair, when I'm playing my drum. Now I'm in, you know, that's a way of getting myself into a trance mode, and being able to connect. And then there are times where, like, I'm in the car or I'm doing something super mundane, like I'm getting a pedicure and my guides are telling me something. And I'm just, but like, this has taken time to hone, you know, psychic abilities are like a muscle.
For sure.
So now, where I am now in my journey, I'm able to have more of a running conversation, but the universe speaks to us through signs and symbols. It's not all like auditory. Sometimes I will get a song, get a number, get a word. Like, for instance, this year, back in October, my guides were telling me your word that, you know, you're going to focus on is creation, and creation just kept coming to me. And that's the word I've chosen for 2024. You know, creation. I'm going to be birthing what I came here to create, which is my poetry. I believe that I will be like publishing more than just, I've self-published up until this point, but I believe that it's meant to go to a larger audience and on a mass level.
Right.
And that's a part of it. So recognizing synchronicities, you know, like if you want to, you know, tap in with your spirit guides, ask a question. And you will, and if you pay attention, you will 100% get an answer. I'll tell you this. So like when I first had my awakening and I was working at a hotel, it was in Dallas, and it was an older hotel, which kind of had like an interesting vibe to it because it was, had a lot of history in there. And I was in this store, I was running a boutique, and I was in there by myself. And I was like, okay, spirit, if you are really real, make yourselves known. Well, I'm not even kidding. Yeah. A few minutes later, now something that was on a shelf that had a lip, that was not, it was placed on a shelf, like just bloop, fell right off. And I was like, okay, you're here. Wow. Gotcha. I mean, and, lights, they like to play with lights a lot. Like the lights will flicker. I mean, all these things are real. Being able to disrupt technology and audio. Like when I know when my children were little, sometimes I hear spirit over their intercom.
That's so crazy. I just wonder because like I've tried this before. Like I've sat there in my room and I'm
you can't. Okay. Okay, well, all right. So it's not going to always work like that. It's not like, instant but that's like instant gratification. No.
Yeah.
But it will show itself. It will reveal. It will. I mean,
I like that. Yeah, I think it's just about being
aware and it's being an awareness
open to it, I think. And and it may not happen like right here and right now. But like another message I think that spirit guides always tell us is like oftentimes in hindsight, right? Like after you've gone through something and you're like, this is horrible. This situation is so bad. It was not good for me. But then I don't know, like a few years down the line, you look back and you're like, in a way, I'm glad that this painful situation happened because it's protected me or saved me in other ways and in other
absolutely it's all a communication. It's all a communication, right. and it's for us to learn from and grow from. And like so I see a lot of colors and I see a lot of symbols. And so I remember when I first started tapping in, learning how to do this and go into session, I'd close my eyes and I'd see these two rectangular pillars, and it looked like buildings, right? And I was in the center of them. Well, just last night I had a session, which I tend to tap in and have sessions with my own mentor every few months because I feel like it's important for her to come in and like a third party look into my energy field and help me clear things that maybe I can't see because I'm too involved in it. And so I said to her last night, I said, Lindsay, I just got the message of understanding what those two buildings always have been. One of them is my dad, and the other one is Polly, who's my partner. And they are here in this. They will keep. My dad was here, and now he's on the other side. And they are helping me, have a foundation.
Yeah.
They are my support. They are my part of my structure. Mm-hmm. Like right and left and right. That. Yeah, and they're just like I'm in between them, and they're supporting me. And that's how I feel. Yeah. And I was like, wow. That's amazing. That was a few years later. And I mean, that's also how it works. Like being clairvoyant, I can see things and know things, but I don't know exactly when they're going to transpire into this physical realm. I'll pick up on things and I'm like, then, a few months later, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Okay. I remember. And so I like to say this is like this giant filing system that I kind of have to like keep in order and in track of. But I just recognize it, file it away. You can't get stuck on it because I'm not God. I don't know when things are going to happen.
Right. No. Yeah. And also like, even if you did sort of like foresee certain things, it's also like how other people may or may not believe it. And it's, it's hard to live in this world with this kind of ability, where there's a lot of skepticism around, right? Like we live in this scientific age where everyone's just like science or I'm not listening.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate in a lot of ways, and I feel like that's really changing because there's too much proof. There's too much proof to it, and there's too many people saying no. Like we are experiencing this. I mean, there's a lot of people writing about this and talking about it, and I feel like the tide is changing. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism. I mean, there's falsehood in everything. There's you know,
For sure.
But I feel like once you have these experiences and you get to a level, so I know light workers and people like me who are leaders, we all have been on board and online about this before 2020 happened, before COVID happened. And I feel like that happened to shake up this world, to start to break the paradigm, because it's no longer a fit. And we are healing and growing. And I knew not to fear it. And like, I was like, oh no, this is beautiful. This is love. And I mean, like I said, like my own dad and my sister's dad, so we have different dads, passed over, and my ex-husband's father, all three of them passed within 6 months. They are soul sacrifices. They are for us to recognize how precious life here on this planet is, and how out of balance we are with nature. And so what do I see happening? I see a lot more Mother Nature, you know, showing up. I see a lot more weather things happening. I see a lot more destruction happening. And that's necessary, because what did COVID do for a lot of people? It showed people, well, wait a minute, like my connections to other people are important. My own health is important. That's what we were meant to focus on. And that's what many people focused on. I mean, I look at it as a beautiful time of transformation. That's what it was for me.
Yeah. Because we have experienced, you know, like big epidemics, viruses, or whatever you want to call it, like this in the past, but it's never quite been quite like this, right? The way that we responded to it, I think this time around was very different. Here in China, I know like we were, you know, to stay at home for 3 months, not allowed to like exit our houses. And I think like definitely to teach me about the importance of like that social aspects, but also at the same time, it taught me, you know, how to be more comfortable in that silence and to be more comfortable with myself too. And, you know, I think it was around this time when I did a meditation. I remember I went for a yoga retreat, and I did this meditation, and I had been at this retreat for a couple of days, and I was, you know, doing the motions of like the meditations, the yoga, and I was like, okay, this is nice. It's like calming, it's peaceful. That very last meditation that we did, this was like the last day. We had to do a meditation, have some breakfast, hop on the bus, and come back to city. That meditation was altering because I had stepped out of my body. I had had an outer body experience. Felt like I was the absolute essence of me. I was the center of my universe, but yet I was not in my physical being. But I was like this tiny, but I was also vast. Like there was no concept of time, no concept of space, no concept of size, no concept of any kind of physicality. It was just like this weird place that I was in. It was only once I've ever experienced this. And I remember like searching for that moment again, for that meditation. And I think like for me, it might be like that energy is more stronger when I'm meditating in a room full of people, because whenever I do it on my own, and I've tried to play meditations like on my phone, chants with like, you know, tens of people there to
recreate it,
to imitate sort of that kind of recreate that vibe. It's not quite done it for me. But when I'm in a room full of people, I completely tapped out. And like the thing is, that meditation was over, everyone got up, everyone like went off, but I was in a totally different place. So the instructor actually like got up from her seat, and she came and she just sat there in front of me and like waited for me to like go through my, you know, thing. And when I finally came to, I remember the first thing I said was, where am I? Like, what is this? And I looked around, and it was just like this crazy warping of like, oh, realizing that this is where I am, and this is how I look, and this is the size of me. And I needed to sort of like grasp myself a little bit to sort of get that physical feeling. And I think that was probably the closest that I'd ever been to, I don't know, maybe dimensional traveling.
Yes, I don't know what it was. That is our actual reality where you were. You know, I always say like, how clean is your lens? Because we are able to get there. There's a lot of density within the human experience that will block us from these things. I'm somebody who has practiced transcendental meditation for years. And so I am able to transcend and to drop in and to go into those places a lot. And it is pretty wild. And you do need a minute to come back and go, whoa. Like the first time it happened, I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I was in like a black hole. And I've been able to recreate that in different healing. So another healing I've done is float therapy, when you're in a sensory deprivation tank. That is like heaven on earth for someone like me. because it's dark, it's quiet. I don't sense anything except for myself. I can even tap in so much to hear my blood moving through my body and my heart beating. Like, it's gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
I use a lot of sound frequency too. I haven't mentioned that. Sound frequency is a total game changer for me. That literally affects your brain. It changes your brain waves. So it changes your brain waves.
Right.
And it just, there's not a day that goes by that I don't meditate without sound frequency. And I do different frequencies. So the first time I listened to a high frequency 963, I literally ran my own personal marathon. That's how much focus I had, because that's what it is. It's a state of, it's an awakened state. And then there's lower frequencies that will help with like pain management and, will put you in more of a relaxed space. I use a lot of like 639, which is heart chakra opening. I use that to tap into spiritual realms before I go into a session. So it depends. When I first started using them, I was doing 432, which is like the universe, like that's Earth. That's the vibration of Earth. And I started to see, that was a game changer for me. That was like a level up, starting to really tap into different things. I remember in December of 2020, the Great Conjunction, this was right around the solstice, was the first time I saw the web of connection. So we are all literally connected, and it's through these golden threads. And so I was outside meditating, and I opened my eyes, and it was the entire sky. And it was just this humongous golden web. And my guides told me this is the web of connection. And I was like so overwhelmed by it. And I literally got up. I was super dizzy, and I went and laid down. I think I took a nap for like 2 hours. It was like so much to take in. Yeah. Wow. But these are all things that I believe are accessible to see. This is just like a seat. Yeah, really.
Yeah. And instead of like, using these things like as a way to think that like I'm going crazy, use it as a way to be like, hey, like let's explore this a little bit more before I start to jump to any conclusions.
And when you're there, you actually hear truth. Like where you were seeing yourself. Like I actually have a poem about that, about recognizing myself as a tiny grain of sand. Because that's what we are. We're tiny grains of sand. There is no time. There is no space. Everything is happening all at one time. It's just like there's many, many, many different timelines. This is part of feeling our multidimensionality, feeling like we're in 3 different places all at once, because that's really what's happening.
Right.
It's wild. And it's an interesting experience. And it does sometimes make me really dizzy, kind of nauseous. But it's all in grounding yourself, because if I'm not grounded into the earth, none of the traveling to the higher realms and picking up on the higher chakras is going to integrate into my being. So it's very important to stay grounded. Sure. So like when you came, my dog, when I will come out of my body now, because I'm aware of it, I'm not doing it from trauma. I'm doing it from being able to travel outside of this vessel here. And bring back information. But he'll sit on me. He comes over, he sits right on me. And it's like, nope, come back, Maria. Get back in your body. And so he likes to help me do that. And I have a weighted blanket that I like to use. I use a lot of different things.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about one of the energy healing sessions that maybe really stood out to you?
Oh my. So I was living with a healer friend of mine, and her mother had committed suicide in their apartment. And so I knew when I went to live with her that I was going to be seeing her mom's spirit. I just knew her mom's spirit was still going to be there, even though she told me, I had somebody come in and clear the space. And I was like, no, no, you didn't. And that's okay. I just knew that was my purpose of being there. And so I was helping her heal through that. But I also watched her mom. So like, interestingly enough, I had worked on her a few months before this actually had happened. And in that session, I intuitively knew that was her plan. But, there's a lot of things that go on that stay, and that's a huge part of the healing that I do. It's like seeing somebody on the most intimate level, more than being physically naked. I'm seeing your soul and your soul information. And that's something that I hold, that's part of my ethical boundaries. I would never discuss that with anybody else. But I was able to help because her mother's spirit took over her physical body. And I literally saw her mother appear in her. It was wild. It was wild. And she was losing physical abilities. She was like literally breaking down. She didn't know what was happening to her. And I actually had another healer friend of mine fly in, and the two of us were able to help her mother's spirit ascend and basically remove her from her physical body, from my friend's physical body. Oh, wow. She was possession is a real thing. That is an absolute real thing.
Yeah.
And it's,
is that
what?
Is that something that happens? Like, have you come across many cases like this? Where
not many, not in my own practice. I know my mentor has. She's more of a demon slayer than I am. But I have. I mean, I've experienced my mother, and I've experienced people in my family with demonic attachments. Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a complex thing, but yeah, so that was wild. That was a wild thing to go through. It was exhausting. That was a lot of energy coming out of my body, because this all comes through me. Like, I'm not doing the work. Maria's not in charge. I have a dragon energy that I work with, and the dragon takes over and does all of that. But, that was the most intense for sure. Working on people that have never had healing, that is also really, really exciting. I recently worked on somebody who had never had an energy healing. Working on my own son was really beautiful because, as a mother, we will always want to heal our children. But being able to come in as a guide for his own spirit and help him connect to his spirit guides, that's beautiful. And having him go, wow, mom, afterwards, God, I have so much energy. That was incredible. I was like, you're welcome.
Yeah. That's so cool. And how long does it take?
My sessions are an hour long.
Mm-hmm. And so after one session, a person is able to sort of be in touch with their spirit?
So most people I work on are already sensitive. We tend to, so this is an energetic match. There's a reason why I can work on someone and not work on another person. You have to be open to it. I'm not here for everybody. I'm not everybody's, flavor or spice, and I'm not trying to be. Getting to this level of healing isn't something you don't begin with this. I feel like you have to be ready for this. And so, it's an energetic match. And so I always recognize people that I work with, we have a lot of commonalities. I have gone through many, I'd say 10 out of 10 people I work with have had sexual trauma, have had addiction issues. There's a lot of energies within me that I'm able to recognize within them and help them to heal. That's how it works.
Right.
And so it all depends. I can go in and I can readjust the energetic field, but it's up to that particular person, how they want to handle their emotions, their mentals. You know what I mean? The rest is on you. So I can do all these things on an energetic level, but on the human level, that's up to you. How do you really want to heal?
Interesting. Yeah. And you can if you can tell if a person really is ready or just saying it.
I've only worked on one person that I was like, I'll never work on this person again, because it has to be an energetic match, and I'm not here to force anything. Right. I'm not, this is a niche. I feel like this is very much something that people seek out. I don't seek out people. Absolutely not. And a lot of, that's really cool. Getting back to the poetry. So a lot of things I channel, my friend that I was helping, I had channeled a message from her mother. And when I read that poem to her, she was she felt so connected to it. And I was like, oh, that was for you. So I've channeled a lot of messages from my dad. I was able to write something for him about him the morning that he passed over, because I saw all that. I saw his transition. It was gorgeous. And then I was able to share that at his memorial. And that was a pretty cool role to hold, to stand there and to memorialize my dad and share a message from him. And, he helps me write a lot.
Yeah. I love that.
So that's where that always, I'd say most all of my sessions, a poem ends up in them. And I'm usually guided to it. Like I'll look over my wealth of poetry and I'll feel like, oh, this one needs to sit in this session. This is going to help this person.
Talking of, I'd love to hear one of your
poems. So I felt guided to share this one just because we're talking about empowerment a lot and triumphing over trauma, triumphing over your tribulations, right? So this is in my 7th book called My Soul's Music. It's called Born to Believe. I was born as a beating heart, raw and exposed, shyness met with grace, chaos stuffed in closets, keeping quiet and composed. I was born with stories that would take years to tell, never understanding why the voices around me always had to yell. Fear invaded my world, held me captive for 40 years. Healing through trauma by a strong belief in a higher power dried all my tears. I was born for something greater than I could ever imagine. Someday I'll stand on a stage in time with divine, inspiring others to believe in their own purpose by sharing testimonial truths. We are all here for a reason. Search your life for the proof.
I love
Thank
that.
You. People ask me like how, because writing for me, writing these poems, a lot of times I feel like I really can't take full credit. It's just something I'm listening to. I usually see the words like they're scrolling on like a light board. Like, you know, when you see those like scrolling like advertisements, that's kind of how I see them. And then there's sometimes where I have like artistic license, obviously, because my soul is interpreting these. So like I will, you know, kind of add my spin to them. But they're messages that I'm hearing. Like for instance, I mean, I can share with you the one that I use to tap into sessions. It's called Highest Self. In silence, I sit, contemplating my existence. Closer inspection reveals a lessened resistance to soul, inner knowing, revealing true intuition, softening everything, quieting the roar, unraveling conditioning, settles the score. This is truth, authentic spirit, and light shining from within. Ego steps aside, light radiates therein. Listen closely to your soul's desires and follow your gut. Shifts with an entire being, settled, now at peace. I am centered, I am balanced, I am encased in white light. I radiate love from the inside out. I am love, I am light, I am plugged into source. I am refueled by its power. I receive light, I give love. Love is all I am. Love is the only truth. I am love. And as I'm doing this with you, because I do this in session, my hands are getting incredibly hot because that is what I will do. When I'm in a long distance session, I will sit over a crystal grid, and that is how I heal people. It's like that's their chakra system, is the crystal grid I set up. And then when I'm actually with people, my hands are over them, and that's how I'm working. So as I'm saying all this, my hands are like an iron, like two irons.
Wow.
So yeah, that was fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. There was so much truth to what you were saying. I was actually like trying to listen in on what you were saying, and just like the word for word, the message that you were trying to get across.
Well, that's what we're doing. So that's what I use to connect our fields. And then I'll bring a client through a meditation that will, will awaken each of the chakras and kind of like connect me in so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Well, it's an art. I mean, this is an art,
Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure like after listening to this, a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in, like having a session with you.
I hope so.
Or at least a consultation.
Yeah, so that's what I offer free consultations. I work with people all over the world. Through, I don't like to do video. Video to me is very, very distracting. So I just use a phone. That's it. Just an audio. I just need your voice. And that's how we connect. And then, I do have an office here in my home that I work on people. But yeah, like I said, I'm planting seeds. I'm here to help people along in their own journey, as a guide. And, Shamans have done this since the beginning of time.
Final message, final plugins, final message you'd like to get across to our listeners today.
Shine your light, be who you are. I mean, how I always close a session is I say, in light and in shadow, always with love. Namaste. And that, you know, namaste. You and I know what namaste means. It means the light within me recognizes the light within you. And we must own our light. We must own our shadow. And we do all of that with love. So that is my message. I say, like, you know, I'm here to heal one heart at a time. I'm here to heal humanity one heart at a time through poetry and shamanic healing. And that is what I'm here to do.
Amazing. Maria, thank you so much for being on the podcast and, you know, sharing such insight with all of us.
Thank you, Janica, for having me. This was lovely.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Chris Trzynski, Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.